Howdy YouTube, and welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So this video here, I'll be taking you guys through the prep, masking and paintwork on this VF Commodore. So the name of the color is Phantom Metallic and the color code is 690F. It's actually a pretty cool color when you get it out into the sun. It's just got a little bit of metallic in it. A few years ago, I actually found out that with Glazeret solvent line, so 55 line Glazeret, I was best off using this color on the Mercedes. It was a better variant than the, I think it was called like Obsidian Black on the Mercedes. So just a little one for the memory banks if you're using 55 line Glazeret solvent. I can just about remember the Profi number as well. But anyway, we'll get into the prep work. So stage one is to get yourself clean those panels right down. So get some methylated spirits and water is my preferred method, and a dry clean cloth. Wipe all the panels right down, all the edges included, and then we'll dry it right off in case there is a little bit of water left over. I'll usually get the airline. Colder months more so necessary. In summer it'll dry like that. Don't seem to need to blow any of the excess water out of the gaps and that. Yeah, after that I'll just go and tape up the surrounding panels so that I don't damage them when I'm doing my prep work. If you do have to open door jams or anything like that to do your prep work, it's best practice to put a bit of paper or plastic over the opening as to keep the customer's car clean. I wouldn't really appreciate my car going to get repaired and then dust covered all through my interior because the painter or panel beater was too lazy to take 20 or 30 seconds to cover my door jams up. Anyway, continuing on with the job, just blocking the panels down. I've had a few people mention to me, oh, why don't you use a dust extraction system? And on my trolley, I haven't actually got a vacuum. I've been meaning to get one for quite some time and it is coming soon. So yeah, future videos I will be using proper dust extraction. These days I just use my respirator, and it seems to be certain shops have different cultures and different people do different things, and this, I don't know, no one really seems to use a vacuum. I started to use them when I first came back here, and then it just got to the point it's like nobody else does it, why the hell should I do it, you know? So just think about yourself. But yeah, soon I will be getting myself a vacuum cleaner and extraction system. Yeah, got a couple of things in the pipeline, so coming soon. Anyway, blocking the repairs down, making sure I'm quite happy with it. You can feel them by hand as you see me doing there. Make sure there's no ripples that are able to be felt by the hand. And also you can get some wax and grease remover or Prep-Sol and spray that over the panel. That will emulate a wet look, and you can get your eye down the side and you'll be able to see any slight imperfections if they are there. Especially on a black, they are going to show up more so than most colors. All your dark colors. Although as far as your prep work goes, it's a little bit more forgiving. Like if you were to, for instance, miss a 240 grit scratch or a 180 grit scratch, one or two fine ones, you'd maybe be able to see it in your base coat, but then if you smash a couple of coats of clear over, you'll usually fill it up. Although on the other side, it'll probably shrink back over time, but you will be able to polish it out. Whereas on a silver, once you see anything in your base coat, you clear over it, you're still going to be able to see it. The clear will not fill up any imperfections in lighter metallics, and silvers particularly. So once I've got the panels blocked down and I'm happy with it, obviously dust it off, blow all the dust off and inspect, make sure I'm happy with it, and then apply some guide coat and use some 400 grit. There's a few different ways of doing it. You can go 180 on the block, you can then go 320, but for a small area like this, I knew that one piece of 400 was going to get rid of those 180 scratches. Alternatively, you can even block your panels down with 240 grit and then go 400 and then finish it off with say 500 or 600 or something like that. So yeah, all of these methods, they're adaptable. They're not like a 100% you have to use these exact grades, although I do recommend finishing for solvent base at least with 500 or 600 grit. Where you're going to put your color, but where you're going to be doing blend areas, I would say 600 to 1000 grit, in that range. There's no use in going any finer because it's just going to clog up the sandpaper a lot more, and you'll burn through twice the amount of sandpaper. And if you go much coarser, well, then you'll be in the realm of shrink back, and the clear won't even fill those scratches up. And then later on it will actually shrink back into those scratches, and you'll be able to see sort of pigtails and stuff like that. So as you probably saw before, there was one little cut through just on that line, and I used a little bit of 1K primer. While that 1K primer is drying, I'm going around buzzing those blend areas down, prepping the blends up. And yeah, I think this is actually the last model of Commodore that there will be ever made in Australia, the VF Commodore. But you can see that this actually has been painted before. We call them sausages, or those big build-ups on the edges of the panels, and they are pretty ugly to me. It's one thing having them there, but painting over them just accentuates the ugliness of them. You know, they didn't really seem to stand out that much until I started sanding it. But if I was to go and paint over it again, add to it, even if it's only by 10 or 20%, it would just be big thick build-ups on the edge. So I make sure I do sand them out quite well. You could block it out if you want, but most of the time orbital sander held in the right angle, you'll be able to get rid of them. And yeah, I know I've made a few cut throughs there, but later on when we go into the booth and we're doing the spray painting stage, I'll be using some transparent sealer, 222S, and I'll show you guys that later on, and that actually does help with shrink back. Although if you're using waterborne paint, it wouldn't be an issue. Just be careful that you don't cut through to bare steel, and if you do, put a bit of primer on it, because water and metal equals rust, doesn't it? So yeah, just getting those blends prepped up, bit of control required in your orbital sander, and again, that's probably one of those things going to take a bit of practice. You're going to ruin a few blends here and there, but yeah. And if you are new to doing this kind of thing, I probably wouldn't recommend using 600 grit on your blends like I do. I'm pretty experienced with the Orbi in my hand, the orbital sander in my hand. Maybe start off with even 1000 grit, then work your way up to 800. Lots of people still use 800 grit, even experienced tradesmen use 800 grit on their blends for solvent. I'd probably go 800 grit for water, just because it's that little bit finer and the water seems to shrink back into the sanding scratches a bit more. I found you need to go that next step with waterborne. However, solvent, I can blend over 600 grit, no worries. And yeah, what else was I going to say? Again, we've got these big sausages on the back edges of this door. That's just a result of the last painter, whoever did it, just going a little bit too heavy, and it's possibly even their overlap. When you watch me spraying this car, you'll probably notice that I don't stop right at the end of it. Like, say this is your panel here, this is the edge of front edge, back end, front edge of your panels. I don't stop my passes here. I will work through and then flick it out few inches off the panel edge, so that I don't actually get those big build-ups on the edge. Something I never used to do. I think a painter mentioned it to me once, and I said, I like it, I'm going to do that, and I have done it ever since. Some people opt to walk the side when they're spraying. I think a lot of Americans actually do walk sides, but I've done it a couple of times, and even the other painter, because I mentioned it to the other painter I work with, and he goes, yeah, when I do that, like, the sides seem a little bit hungry. Like, I like to get a really nice, wet, even finish, and, you know, replicate the factory orange peel. It just seems that you lose a bit of concentration when you are sort of walking that side. You're focusing on your body movement and that, whereas when you're just doing that one panel, all your concentration goes into just your hand movement and painting that one panel, making that look perfect. And just the flick out at the end is pretty important too. But once you get that down pat, you should be right to do panel by panel without getting big build-ups over the edges. However, doing a candy job, maybe, like, I've never done a full respray on a candy. However, if I was going to, I probably would opt to walk the side, just so that you don't, in the color, you don't get sort of double ups. Yeah, I know, I can talk. I've been doing this for a while. I've had to learn how to talk a lot of crap. But anyway, continuing on with the job, as you saw, I blew it all off before I went over the blend areas with a piece of 800 grit by hand. So I'm just doing this to cut down any of the orange peel that may be left over. As you already know, these panels have been done before due to the evidence of the big thick build-ups on the edge. This is going to be removing any orange peel. And let's just say, for instance, they had a big chunk of crap in their paintwork land in the opening for the door handle, and I was just to Scotch Brite over that without actually cutting it right down with some proper sandpaper. If I was just to Scotchy over it, that's just going to still leave that lump. I'll then go and paint over it, and I've got crap in my paint job before I even start painting. So that's another reason I do like to use those 800 grit softback sanding sponges. When I was using waterborne, I would swap the 800 grit for a piece of 1000 grit. We had these awesome 1000 grit sanding sponges, and yeah, they lasted for quite some time, but they were expensive. Just keep in mind, from memory, most of the sandpaper prices do go up the finer you get. So the like 2000, 3000, 4000, the micro fine ones, they're really expensive. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. I'm always conscious of, not overdoing it and not wasting materials in the workshop. Like for instance, a piece of Scotch Brite, that will last me for a week. Like, yeah, and even then, like I'll be able to walk around the workshop and find an old piece of Scotch Brite to use most of the time. It's actually quite rare that I go and get a brand new piece. But when doing blends, so you notice I was using the 800 grit sanding sponge first, and then these days I've actually been using a bit of grey scotchy just to get those last shiny spots. But when using grey scotchy for your blends, make sure it is clean. So I'll get my air blower and blow that scotchy out first, just to make sure that there's no dust in there that's going to contaminate those blends. So if someone had to say grab that and scotch it over a piece of primed area, and it's got that light grey primer dust on it, and then you go and push that into your blend area, that could possibly contaminate your blend, and you'd have that light grey primer colour under your blend, and yeah, that's not good. So once that's all done, again, give it a good blow down and remove your edge masking, and next up I'm ready to start having a look at the colour. I won't get too involved with the colour, but yeah, I'm just basically using the spectrophotometer for it. You got to be careful with blacks in Standox and darker colours when using the spectrophotometer. Make sure that those panels are polished up really well, because the camera in the spectrophotometer will read any sort of hazy milkiness over the panel. So yeah, get a nice fine polish it up, then take your photos, put the color code in, especially with blacks I've found, and make sure you're actually mixing the right color up. I always make sure with metallics at least that I'm mixing the right color up. However, for a solid color, as far as I'm concerned, there's less that the Spectro or the computer software can sort of get wrong with a solid color. I guess there's more variables with a metallic color. So always on a metallic, well, 9 times out of, probably 99 times out of 100, I'll make sure I'm mixing up the correct color with a metallic. But yeah, so I didn't really include any color matching footage, but it turned out this color was not good at the start, so I did end up having to go and mix up like a trial amount. I think it mixed up like 100 mils first, sprayed it out. No, it was no good. I ended up having to go back into that formula and adjust it myself. I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, that's really red, and it needed a bit of an adjustment from the formula itself. So I actually left some of the red out, changed the black that was in it, and yeah, that's again something that's just going to take time and learning a system. But Standox and blacks and some of their blues are quite terrible. But yeah, so going around doing the edge masking, got the car in the booth, even little things like the positioning of the car, that's all by design, I guess. Like the airflow of this booth comes from left of screen to the right of screen. So if I have a panel that's been freshly painted directly on with the airflow of the booth, sometimes I've found I can get contamination in it because the roof filters in this booth are overdue. We've called the guy up ages ago, like 2 months ago, and he's came out to measure them up, but for some reason he must just be like really busy, and he still hasn't came out to change them over. So sometimes if I'm not careful in this booth, I will get silicon issues. These very tiny little silicon spots, but I think it's actually stuff coming from the roof. It's not like there's a contaminant on the panel. It's not like I've actually even done anything wrong. But yeah, it is what it is. I know the workaround, and just make sure it is dry before I hit bake. And yeah, even little things like what I said, just keeping it out of the main airflow of the booth. But yeah, just going around doing my edge masking now. Did that soft edge. I do have a specific video on how to do that soft edge. If you would like to check that out, check through my channel called How to False Edge Mask. But yeah, just get that right on the edge. If anything, just a tiny little bit in so that the paint can flow in under there. Worst case scenario, you're going to have to do a little bit of a T-cut or a 2000 grit, sand and edge back. But 9 times out of 10 on my jobs, doesn't even need to be done. You could obviously, you saw me put 2 stripes of 36mm tape down there, and you can change that for a bit of dart tape, the foam, round foam tape. You could put a bit of that in there too. I don't like to use the foam tape right on the edge. I still like to do that false edge mask because yeah, I found it leaves minimal to no edge. So yeah, obviously making sure I mask up all the rubbers on the rear door. And always mask your rear doors first, unless you've got some weird kind of a car where the doors open backwards, suicide or something like that. You might have to think differently about it, but for a standard car, always mask your rear doors first, because you can't get into the front edge of the rear door if you've already got the front door closed, if that makes sense. And vice versa, when you're unmasking, always unmask your front door first. Because yeah, if you're to go and unmask your rear door first, you've got your paper or whatever it be down in the front edge of the rear door. You could go and push the paper onto your fresh paintwork. Oh, I've made it halfway there. See how I go for the rest of this video. See if I can see the vid right out without copping out and saying watch the rest without me. But yeah, look, as I've said in previous videos, I don't know what, apart from what I've already said about masking, it's one of those parts that, what can I say about it? I enjoy it. But seeing is the best way to explain my masking, So that's the edge masking all done, and we're right for a piece of plastic. If you're doing this kind of thing at home, there's nothing to stop you from using bits of newspaper or something like that, but these boxes of plastic, these rolls of plastic, I think it's like $25, if that, $25 for a whole box of it. I think it's like 40 meters in a box, so just lash out, maybe just forego the carton of beer that weekend, heavens forbid. But yeah, just throw that piece of plastic over and cut it out and tape it down. Love these little letter openers. What lots of people have alerted me that they are. I'd personally never seen any of this used as a letter opener, although I do have one at home now, just for when I do need to open my letters. But yeah, great little handy masking tool, and I've always got it in my pocket. When I used to use razor blades years ago, like I put one in my pocket when I was an apprentice, put my hand in my pocket, and the razor blade was stuck to my finger. I didn't put razor blades in my pocket after that. So before I was using these, you'd always be running around, oh shit, I need to cut something, you got to go and find a razor blade. But now this is in my pocket, wherever I be, I can cut stuff open. So it's a handy thing to have. They got a little magnet on the back of them too, so you can stick them up on the wall of your booth or in your booth box if you've got one. Handy little thing to have. There is also a link to that in the description, because got to the point where I had so many questions about them, it was just going to be easier to put the link in the description down below in the very bottom of this video. So yeah, I guess you should always try to keep your masking nice and tight. You don't want anything flapping around when you're painting. Don't forget that you're going to be spraying at around 20 to 30 psi when you are spraying, so you don't want that masking going all over the place. Another thing, maybe try and keep the back masking, so the side that's got the sticky part on it mostly covered with the second bit of tape that you're putting over it, if that makes sense. So when you go and spray the prep sol over the panel, that can actually wet up the glue. So if you've got too much of that exposed and then you go and wipe over that with your rag, that can drag that onto the panel, and you don't want that. So one of the two things, be very careful when you're wiping it down with prep sol, or just cover most of it up when you are doing your masking stage. I'm actually recording this video on a Friday when all my workmates are at work. We're a little bit quiet. We've been smashing through the work when there's the three of us painters plus an apprentice. I just said to my boss, hey man, can I have tomorrow off? There's no work there. I would actually like to start doing a little bit more of it. If I could start doing 4-day weeks, as long as I can afford it, which I'm in the position I probably can, why not start enjoying life a bit more? Like for the last 5 years, been going head down ass up, saving heaps of money, and I think I got to the point where I don't have to work so hard anymore. I got my girlfriend came over from Laos recently. I went over and picked her up, and we're living here in this little unit together, and life's good. I'm getting home cooked Thai food. I've got my own restaurant basically here, and it's awesome. If she wasn't here, I probably wouldn't have bothered to take the day off. I'd just be sitting here bored, but got someone, we can go out, do some shopping and see some sights, show her around Perth and that. So might even start doing some more uploads on my other channel. I've got one called Gunman Gaming, and also another one called Gunman's World. So there'll be links to that at the end of the video, and also in the description. Check them out if you like. So next stage, once all the masking's done, obviously go around, make sure you're happy with it, make sure you haven't missed any corners, and we'll wipe it down with some wax and grease remover, aka prep sol, and some nice clean cloths. You can change these out just for standard clean cotton white rags, bleached rags, something like that. You don't really want to be using coloured rags. Sometimes the colours can actually run with the solvents in the prep sol, so if you are to use standard rags, just be careful. Only real downside is that you can be left over with a little bit of lint and dust, but most of the time you'll be able to pick that up with the tack rag anyway, which you're always going to use before you paint. And you'll also take note of the fact that I'm wiping over my blend areas first, because I've done my dry sanding. There's been no liquid in the primer dust on that door to actually remove the last little pieces of dust until I've prep soled it. If you're doing wet sanding, it's not as much as a big issue, but that was one of the things that I did come across when I did start dry sanding. I would just prep sol the job down as I normally would, and I found that I had this, on some of the darker colors especially, I had this like ghosty milky color underneath my blend areas, and it took me a little while to realize what it was, and then the penny dropped. That's my primer dust, and I've actually wiped that over that area myself. So yeah, we're right to lay some color down now, just about. Actually, triple 2S first, sorry. And I'll obviously wipe the entire thing down with a tack cloth first. And one other thing I've been doing lately is wiping the surrounding plastic down as well. I've even started doing it sometimes before my clear coat. If I've got time and I'm just sort of waiting for the base coat to dry 100%, I might even go and wipe the dusty base coat, overspray off the plastic, and then tack rag the rest of the job as well, depending. It's one of those things I've just got to monitor. Like, I don't always tack rag my base coat, but sometimes I do. So yeah, about to start painting some shit. As you see there, just wiping over the plastic, because what can happen is if there's a little layer of dust over the car, when you're opening the plastic up, that will actually, the exterior side of the plastic will start underneath with this style plastic I have. Then when you're opening it up, that will end up on the top and on the side that you're actually spraying. So yeah, I just wipe over the plastic. Works well. It's something I never used to do, and like looking back on it, it's like, why the hell haven't I been doing that for, like, my whole career, you know? Like, you know, some of the shops that you work in, they will use dust extraction. Every person will use it. They will wash every car before it even gets worked on, and yeah, you could just about eat off the, you know, the floors in some of these shops. That's not where I work. I have the perks of being able to make videos here, you know. There's many reasons I am here. Good crew. I enjoy work. It's relaxed, you know. Like, when I first came here from Melbourne, one of the first things I noticed in this shop was it was just so relaxed, you know. Like, if this was in Melbourne and so I had this car masked up, ready to go at 10 to 4, it would be go, 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 get it painted, and then even get that next one out there painted too. But it seems over here, they're just like, they're looking at me funny, like, oh, do you want me to paint this tonight? And like, don't worry about it, mate, do it in the morning, you know. So, and plus they're always happy with my workflow anyway. Like, I always used to get assigned jobs by the foreman, Kerry. He's a good bloke. He's actually left back to Ireland now. Pity that he's gone, but I think people move on, you know. But he would always assign me X amount of jobs, usually 3 to 5, depending on the size. If they're just bumper bikes, I'd probably smash 5 out, 3 if they're jobs around this size. And I would always get them done. I wouldn't let anything get in my way, you know, even if I did have to stay back for 20 or 30 minutes, but 99% of the time I'd get them done during the day and not have to do overtime. And that gains you respect in the workshop, you know, especially from the bosses. And as I said, you know, like, when you go for a pay rise and you're doing that kind of a work and you're reliable and the quality of your work is good, and you do say to your boss, hey, I need a pay rise, you know, they can only say no at the end of the day, can't they? So, yeah, so I'm still using the Sagola 4600 Xtreme Aqua for base coat. It's been at the top spot for, well, I guess the top spot's a clear gun, but it's been at the, base coat application stage for over 6 months now, and still really enjoying using it. And I decided to leave this little bit of footage in. That's just me drying that base coat down, just with a bit of air out of the spray gun. I've had, like, even paint reps tell me, well, 2 paint reps from the one distributor, the one place. One tells me you can't do it with solvent, the other one tells me you can. So I say you can, and one says, oh, but you can trap the solvents inside there. And my answer to that is, well, why can you do it with water if you can't do it with solvent? You can trap the water in there on a water-based job as well. You can skin, more so likely to happen with a waterborne job than solvent-based job anyway. And the ramifications for a water-based job is a lot worse. Like, if you clear over wet water-based, the water is still going to be dry, and when you hit bake, and you're going to get bubbles coming up through your clear coat. Whereas with solvent, you're just going to get a bit of solvent pop, buff it out, no worries. If you did the same thing with water, you got yourself a bit of trouble. But yeah, just taking note, now I'm onto my clear coat, obviously using the Nebula, just taking note that I was just keeping off that door edge a little bit, just so I didn't get those big ugly build-ups as the last person did. Settings for the gun remain the same. 4 turns out, 3.5 to 4 turns out, which is just about full fluid for this gun. 2 bar pressure and full fan. Loving it. Love that Nebula, and the digital gauge is pretty handy. Probably saves you about 50 grams from memory, something like that, and I like it. I'm a bit of a convert. I always used to like analog gauges, but I don't know why I've really been enjoying using the digital on this. Looks cool too. Looks a lot nicer than the analog ones down the bottom of your gun. And yeah, I'm just using the Duxone 2K clear. This stuff's awesome. I mean, for a cheap panel clear, it's really quite a good clear. I love it. Obviously the Standox, you know, if we get like more your prestige cars, will use the Standox. I've been on the Standox standard clear lately, which is exactly the same as the Chroma Clear. As probably most of you know, Axalta is the parent company of Speedtecker, Standox, and Chromax, which is ex-DuPont. So Axalta coatings, they basically make it easier, and they have like one clear, and then they'll just change the label on it to Standox, double the price, really. Well, maybe not quite double the price exactly, but it's exactly the same stuff as the Chromax Chroma Clear, the Standox Standard Clear is. But yeah, as far as the Duxone Clear, what I'm using here, I love it. You can smash that stuff on, no reducer required. Sometimes in the colder months, which it is at the moment, I'll just put it into the microwave for 20 seconds. So if I've got like 500, 600 mils, put it in the microwave for 20 seconds, get it up to 30 degrees, which is booth and hopefully panel temperature. It'll flash off a lot quicker, flow out a little bit nicer, less chance it runs. Yeah, reduces your flash off times in between coats and before baking even. As I was saying, like if I bake these jobs when it's still sort of tacky, I will get silicone all through the job. So these days, if I've got time, if I've got half an hour, I'll just leave it in there for half an hour before I hit bake. So that's about it. I've made it towards the end. That's 30 minutes of me talking shit. Thanks for making it up to the end with me. Let's have a bit more of a look around it. We'll have a look at the job when it's all cleaned up out the front. Yeah, so one of my other videos has made it to 1 million views. That's totally awesome. That's really cool. So thanks to everyone for doing all the usual, sharing, liking, commenting and all that stuff. It's helped me get there. But yeah, one video, 1 million views, it's a real achievement, I guess, you know. And this channel itself ain't too far off from 100,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool. So there's the car when it's getting washed by our detailer. And we'll have a quick look at it out the front when it's all finished off. Be sure to check out my website. As always, there's lots of articles over there. And yeah, all my links to all my social media is in the description down below, all my other channels and all that kind of stuff. So check them out if you're interested. If not, watch another video. If not, whatever. It's all good. Until next time, gunners, get out there and paint some shit. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.